Welcome to Ask Rabbit Entitled Parents, where an entitled Karen shuts down an entire restaurant for a fake allergy. I have some awesome stories for you today. Let's jump right into it. This first post is titled, Entitled Mom Halting Service with Her Deadly Allergy, then Orders It for Dessert. Alright, my mother has some hypochondriac traits. She will have a new disease now and then, always self-diagnosed, and she will call for an ambulance if she's so much as constipated. A sprained ankle is always broken, and a stomach ache isn't due to all the painkillers she's self-medicating with, but of course, it's a hidden heart attack because she's read on Google once that could be a sign. Anyways, she's lactose intolerant when it suits her. She actually had the test, and it came back negative. Okay, so it's my birthday, and she wants to go to a nice restaurant where we live. It's a weekend, and they're usually very busy. We get there, and she gives the server a long lesson about her lactose intolerance and how she could die if she accidentally gets some with her food. The server takes our orders. Anyways, our food is taking a bit of time. They're packed and frantic. So she's calling the waiter over, asking how long we need to wait, and the server explains that in order to cook her food, they had to clean the kitchen, completely emptying their stove, cleaning every utensil, and so on, so halting the entire service to make sure her food does not have any trace of lactose. We get our food, and it's amazing. As we finish, they ask if we'd like dessert, and my mother orders chocolate truffle. The waiter stares at her, saying that's chocolate and basically made of lactose. My dear mother says, well, it's okay to cheat for a good dessert. The look on that poor waiter's face. A mix between wanting to smack my mother and getting teary-eyed. She took the order though and came back with our desserts. I've never been more ashamed in my life. I never went back there. Alright, this next post is titled, A Short Plane Ride with Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid. Little details. I'm a white male, 30 years old, brown hair, brown eyes, short beard, 6 foot. Story. I had just sat down next to the window on a flight to New Mexico that was about a 2-hour flight. I'm generally very laid back and have a go-with-the-flow attitude. Recently, the limit on space seating has ended on coach flights, allowing everyone to sit next to each other when wearing masks on short flights. I have 2 empty seats next to me. Seats are assigned, but generally attendants can allow the switching of seats if warranted. Entitled Mom walks down the aisle with Entitled Kid, stops at my aisle, and turns to look at me. I look over as she seems to be sizing me up. I kindly offer Entitled Kid the window seat as what doesn't seem much to me could easily mean the world to him. I'm honestly not sure if either of them heard me as her Entitled Kid instantly out of nowhere started crying in crocodile tears and creating a tantrum about sitting in the window seat. I once again offered my seat and began to stand up. Entitled Mom, paying no attention to Entitled Kid, began giving me the I'm a mother tone and berating me for making her precious Entitled Kid cry. I'm a terrible man that needs to learn to respect women and children. An attendant makes her way over to see what Entitled Mom's shouting and Entitled Kid's crying is about. Entitled Mom begins again mentioning I disrespected her son and herself and that I should be removed from the plane. I've kept my mouth shut as I'd very much like to make it to my destination. The attendant asks me if it's true what she claims. In short words, I reply with a simple, no ma'am. The attendant then asks if I'd like to switch seats. I agree, and as we start to walk away, the Entitled Kid jumps to the window seat as if he wasn't crying a moment ago. Entitled Mom once again demands I be removed from the flight. The attendant looks back and replies, ma'am, if you raise your tone to me one more time, it will be you who's removed from the plane. That shut Entitled Mom down quick. The attendant asked me to follow as she led me to a seat in business class. I thanked her and asked how many times she has found herself in this situation. She said, honey, I've been doing this for 20 years. I run into this every other flight. It's best to just switch a seat and diffuse the situation than to let it play out. And she walked off. I got to enjoy my first time in business class next to a window. For a bit of petty revenge, at the end of the flight, generally coach is the last to exit, but I asked the same attendant if I could wait until coach had passed before exiting the plane. The attendant knew exactly what I wanted and said to take as long as I needed. Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid started by the aisle I sat in, and I mentioned with a smile that I hoped they had a pleasant flight. Entitled Mom gave me the biggest frown I've ever seen and exits the plane. The attendant gives me a pack of nuts as I left the plane, and I have much more respect for what attendants deal with daily. I've read about these stories multiple times, and I've honestly doubted some of them. Never again. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed those first two stories. Before we get into the next few stories, if you guys could please do me a huge favor and hit that like button down below. It really does help the video out. And make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any future content. Alright, this next post is titled, Entitled Dad Threatens to Call Cops Over a Lunchbox. So it's the end of the day on Friday. Camp normally ends at 3. The counselors will leave at 3:15, and Mike, the head counselor, will stay with the kids in aftercare until the last kid gets picked up by 6. However, on Fridays, the counselors all stay late to clean up, usually until about 5 or 6. The kids in aftercare just play by themselves, or we put on some cartoons. Mike usually plays with them, but as mentioned, Friday is cleanup day. We are all cleaning up, and slowly the parents of kids in aftercare are trickling in to pick their kids up. Sam is just hanging out. Now, we had another kid in the camp, Isaac. His parents had already picked him up. He and Sam had the same model lunchbox. We didn't have a problem with this until today. Entitled Dad comes to pick up Sam. It goes to get his lunchbox from the table. He picks it up, marches to Mike and says, "This is not my kid's lunchbox." Mike sighs and says calmly, "I'm sorry, we had another kid this week, Isaac, who had the same lunchbox. I guess that's Isaac's lunchbox you're holding." Entitled Dad scoffs and says, "Obviously, now get my kid's lunchbox back," and starts to walk out with Isaac's lunchbox. Mike rushes forward saying, I can call Isaac's parents, but I'm gonna need you to leave his lunchbox here." No. They have my kid's lunchbox. I have theirs. This is my insurance. I get my kid's lunchbox back. I will give it back when they give me my kids. I'll wait for them to come here." Mike is flabbergasted. All the counselors are listening, but pretending not to so we don't get involved. Mike says, "Well, it might be a while to get a hold of Isaac's parents. They only left 5 minutes ago, so they could still be driving and not pick up the phone." "Well then, I'm not waiting. I'm leaving. You have my address. I give you my permission to give them my address, and they can come to my house and make the exchange." Mike says, "I can't let you leave premises with another kid's property." The entitled dad says, "Why not? You let that family leave with my kid's property." I don't think I've ever seen Mike more confused. Mike said, "That was an accident. I can't knowingly let you leave with that lunchbox." "You guys are lucky I'm not calling the cops." "I'm sorry?" "Your negligence let another family steal my kid's lunchbox." Mike now starting to get a little upset. "Sir, mistakes happen. Again, I apologize for this inconvenience, but there was no crime committed here." This goes on for a few minutes. Eventually, Mike pulls an 1,000 IQ move. He was studying to get his master's in elementary education. He knows how to handle temper tantrums. "All right, sir, I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, would you mind signing Sam out?" He hands Entitled Dad a pen and clipboard with the sign-out sheet. To sign it, Entitled Dad had to set the lunchbox down on the table. Entitled Dad, of course, doesn't notice and falls for it. While he's signing Sam out, Mike quickly takes Isaac's lunchbox and sets it safely behind him. Entitled Dad never notices. Then, Mike checks the contact list and calls Isaac's parents. His end of the conversation goes something like this. "Hi, Isaac's mom. This is Mike from the camp. I believe I have Isaac's lunchbox here." "Yeah, he and another kid had the same lunchbox, so you probably have his." "No worries. When do you think you'll be able to drop it off?" "Oh, really?" "Uh-huh. No worries. See you shortly. Bye." He turns and looks at Entitled Dad. In an impressively calm voice, he states, "They will be back shortly to pick up Isaac's lunchbox, but they do not have Sam's. Isaac just forgot to grab his." It was so silent you could hear a pin drop. The other counselors and I froze for a second, but managed to keep the facade of, "We're just working here, don't mind us." Entitled Dad freezes for a moment, unsure of what to do. I can see the little gears turning in his head. He comes to his epic conclusion, "Well then, it must be here." Genius. He starts tearing around the room, looking everywhere from the lunchbox table to the play area, to the game shelves, to the office where the kids aren't even allowed in, everywhere. Mind you, we had been cleaning up, and so everything was very neat and tidy. While this is going on, Mike decides a different strategy. While Entitled Dad is dismantling the last hour of cleaning and tidying, Mike crouches down next to Sam. During all of this, Sam had just been quietly playing with some toys. He was around 6. Mike says, "Hey buddy, do you remember where you put your lunchbox?" Sam nods. "Where is it?" Sam says, "On the kitchen table." Everything stopped. The other counselors and I couldn't maintain our indifferent facade any longer. We just froze. Half of us staring at Sam, the other half glared at entitled dad. You don't talk to Mike or anyone at this camp like that and get away with it. Now, I briefly want to talk about Mike. He's probably one of the most chill, funniest, silliest teachers and counselors you could find. Absolutely perfect for a job like this. He could entertain the kids for hours, break up arguments, anything. He would put on these funny personas and act out scenes with them. He was also my first career mentor figure that I had and gave me some great advice. If I was older, I'd say, he's the type I could grab a beer with. Just so relaxed and a great guy. He deserves all the praise in the world. I wish I could name him, but that would reveal too much. However, when he stood up, there was a look on his face I had never seen before. Gone was the silliness. Gone was the fun. Also gone was the tolerance for this entitled dad. In the most deadly calm voice that practically shouted anything but calm, he said, "Sam says his lunchbox is on the kitchen table. In your house. He says he never brought the lunchbox to camp today. The lunchbox isn't here." Entitled dad once again freezes. His face goes white, then red, then blue. Guess he was still feeling some of that 4th of July spirit. He stutters for a bit before turning to Sam. He said, "Now look at this. You've made me look stupid." It was at that moment I lost all little remaining respect for this guy. It was also the moment I felt bad for Sam. Throughout the week, Sam had been a less than stellar camper. He'd thrown tantrums, was entitled, didn't follow the rules very well, etc. All frustration I had for him was replaced by pity. He had been raised in a house where his father's mistakes and actions led to him being blamed. He had been raised by a man so entitled he would throw tantrums over a child's lunchbox. That's why I'm not calling him entitled kid in this story. He deserves much better. Anyways, Mike manages to put a stop to that quickly by just stepping behind them and non-physically urging them towards the door. Entitled Dad doesn't get the memo and turns to Mike. I still had some hope Entitled Dad would apologize. Nope. Entitled Dad decided it was time for small talk. He says, "So Mike, you in college?" A stunned Mike says, "Yes." "What are you studying?" "I'm getting my master's in elementary education." "Oh, cool. What's that like?" Mike says, "Great. We learn how to deal with childhood behavior all the time, such as exploration of the world, strengthening communication skills, tantrums." He puts an emphasis on that last part. Entitled Dad finally got the hint and walked out. We all looked at each other like, what the heck just happened? Mike just shook his head, called his boss, the CEO, to tell her what happened just in case, and then we went back to normal. I later asked him about Entitled Dad, and he said that apparently the family is really wealthy and buys a spot for their kids every week in the summer. Then they decide whether or not they want to show up that week, not bothering to ask for a refund. Some families. Alright, this next post is titled, "Between them, my parents ruined 3 batches of chili." Yesterday was a coworker's birthday, and they asked me if I could make them some of the turkey chili like the kind I made for our 4th of July office party. And they reminded me not to add carrots because they were allergic to it and not to make it too spicy. So I bought enough for 2 batches. Serves 12 each. 1 batch for my coworker and the other for my family. For the first 2 batches, I tried using the slow cooker, but for the second 2, I had to use the stove to make it quicker. The first batch. I walked out of the kitchen to let it cook. I came back when it was about done to find my parents dipping their spoons into the chili. As in, they dunked their spoons into it, ate off said spoons, and used the same spoons to get another spoonful. Ew, germs. Well, I can forgive them for that. So, the second batch. My mom asked if I was going to put carrots into it, and I told her no. In fact, I told her twice no carrots. She was chopping up vegetables when I went to the bathroom. I came out, I checked the chili, she added the veggies with carrots. They were cut so small I couldn't scoop them out. I was upset and calmly asked my mom why she added carrots. She answers, "Because the recipe called for carrots." I reminded her that my coworker was allergic. I told her twice, in fact. She tilts her head one way a bit, half closed her eyes, straight-lined mouth, and a light shrug. I didn't hear you say it. I freaking hate it when she says that. When she does that stance and says it like she says it, I know for a fact she heard me. She just brushes what I said right off, and there was no way to argue with her without it turning into a yelling match. Okay, well, I had a little over 2 hours before work at this point, so I made a run to the store to get what I needed to make 2 more batches. I cook it all on the stove rather than the slow cooker. The third batch. It is a tradition on my dad's side of the family that every 30 years, a member is allowed to learn a secret recipe for some kind of Mexican mystery sauce. It's a sweet and spicy concoction that is so freaking good, but it really brings out the heat if you put it in with any other hot items. One of my dad's great nephews got to learn it, and he sent my dad a container of it. My dad thought the chili was too bland and told me that maybe my coworker would like it a bit hotter. I told my dad that it was hot enough and that I know how to make it. Dad gets the sauce anyways and puts it into the chili while I walked off to get ready for work. I came back to taste test it, and it was disgusting. It was far too sweet and did not blend well with what was in there. And it was also so freaking hot, tears were coming down my face. Dad kept insisting it was perfectly fine, even though he could barely eat a spoonful. I dumped it into a container and gave it to him. The fourth batch. At this point in time, I had less than an hour to cook it, so I cooked everything into separate pots and tried to mix it together. I forbade my parents from coming into the kitchen while I worked. I told them both that neither one is allowed anywhere near the kitchen until I was out of the door. They were upset with me over this. They just wanted to help, but I didn't trust either of them. I managed to get it into a container and out the door into my car. I came back in and rushed to get ready, spraying down the inside of the pots and pans I used with soap and told my folks to leave them so I can clean them when I get home. My mom was furious and told me that I should clean up that mess before work. I pointed out that because of her and Dad, I didn't have time to do that. I came home from work to find that my dad cleaned the dishes, and Mom tried to make me feel so guilty for that. I pointed out to her that between the two of them, they ruined 3 batches. My dad did apologize, but my mom was stuck on stubborn and refuses to admit that she was wrong. Well, at least the 4th batch turned out all right. My coworker ate some there and really liked it. In the end, it was worth the fuss to get a smile out of them. Kid ended up eating half of the batch in one sitting. Alright, that's going to wrap up today's Entitled Parents video. I hope you guys enjoyed those stories today. Definitely go ahead and hit that like button for me and leave a comment down below letting me know what your favorite story was. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any future videos. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time.